I just turned it off. I just forgot to turn it on. So if it's like back a little bit. I just.
First time in a decade. I can't either. I guess I've been. I
don't think we've met either. My name's Matt Fuller.
Do a round robin. I'm going to have like for yourself. You know, right, you know, kind of, we were money and, right, we'll be right back. All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Hello, everyone, welcome. We've got a big crowd today. So nice to have so much interest in the work that we're doing. So as always, we're gonna do a round robin around the room to see who's here. So I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus. I'm the chair of the Solid Waste Policy Committee.
Matt Waller, Corey Township Representative.
Sue Magnus, City of Cincinnati, I'm the recycling coordinator.
Colleen McSwiggan, and I can't remember, am I the public member, I think?
Yes.
So remember which was which?
How many people's general member?
I'm Julie Donna, Sustainability Manager for Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Yay, Billy.
Wow.
Thrilled to have you. Mary, introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Like, what? Mary Kraft-Baker, Assistant Solid Waste Manager with Hamilton County Resource.
Lisa Rowlett, Outreach Specialist for Hamilton County Resource.
Sam Plant, Solid Waste Program Coordinator for Hamilton County Resource.
Mi Fong Chen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office.
David Andre, Zero Services, Food Waste Compost Courier.
James Wheeler with GT Environmental.
Tony, we're doing a round robin. We just passed this.
I'm telling you to put you on with SCS engineers.
Here we go. Bob, we'll go to you.
Bob Getter, citizen at large, of interest of the topics.
Kevin Ty, Commissioner Driehaus's Chief of Staff.
Ashley Dove, Fiscal Analyst, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Cheryl Moran, Resource Recovery Specialist. Resource.
Alex Dad, Finance Manager for Hamilton County Environmental Service.
Gage Bradford, Community Specialist in County Resource.
Future McMahon, Hamilton County Prosecutor.
And deputy, you snuck in.
Yes, Brian Peak, the Environmental Enforcement Officer, County County.
Very good. Michelle,
Michelle Ball, Solid Waste Manager for Hamilton County Resource.
we're skipping you for a second.
Barry Customer Health Commissioner, Hamilton County Public Health.
Brad Johnson, Director of Hamilton County Environmental Services.
All right, so we have a new member. Welcome to our group and to our board. So please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mallory Garrissey. I'm a Sustainability Project Manager at the Cincinnati Zoo. So I've been there for about 3 years and I'm now the General Generator.
But I don't know if who doesn't know what part we got.
That makes me feel better about it. Yeah, happy to be here. I think I know a lot of you, not all of you. But
Yeah, welcome. Okay, we are going to move through our agenda here. We've got, our first item is the approval of the minutes for May 15, 2024. Does anybody have any comments, questions, additions, deletions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I do need a motion to approve the minutes as provided in the meeting packet for May 15th, 2024.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's move into public comments. I don't have any cards. Do we have any public comment? Anything online? No, okay, very good. Next item is the resource revenue update and analysis. It's attachment B in your packets. Michelle?
Yes, so it goes through, it's comparing 2024 and 2023 through the month of June. We have kind of a little bit different trends than what we have been seeing. We have a slight increase in district tonnage, about a 4% increase in district tonnage. Less than 1% increase in out of district tonnage, it's usually reverse. And then we have a slight decrease in out of state, about a 4% decrease in out of state. So overall, our tonnage is up about 2% from this time last year, which increased our revenue about $27,000 or about 1.5%.
So Michelle, does that include, I know it's been maybe a month and a half, 2 months, maybe a little bit longer, since Rumpke opened up their new kind of
The
sub,
convenience center?
yeah, which I've used now twice.
Nice.
And I never used the old one because I was a little bit, I felt like, you know, a little bit, I guess, overwhelmed by, yeah, by the truck drivers and, yeah. I mean,
there's a little vehicle.
Right.
With
Yeah.
this big thing.
right, this, you just whip around and
Yeah.
dump it in, and you actually, it's like I guess the Logan's of waste disposal, you just throw it on the ground, and they use the machinery to put up, but it's packed every time I go. Is that reflected in that, or is that a separate stat?
I feel like they did have it open in June. didn't
Yeah, they did, yeah.
they?
So that would be in the,
June. Yeah,
okay.
that would be in the June.
But June surprisingly was lower than May. Like when you look at the tonnage, June was a lot.
yeah, the grand opening was in May, because I remember it was the last day of school and I couldn't make the grand opening. But I've used this facility myself twice, and in the middle of the day, there's a line to get in. Like, you know, like noon on a Thursday, and there'll be 7 or 8 trucks in line. Yeah.
You know, that might be interesting stat to collect at the convenience center to see if that is, now that it's more convenient, hopefully it'll reduce dumping.
Because what it takes away for me, is I didn't have to separate stuff, and I had some things that normally would need to have been wrapped that don't need to be wrapped, that you could just dump in and they'll take care of.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot of, you know, big items, whole range, you could do one the first pickup of the month, and this, you can just all load it up. Yeah, yeah, it's, I think $66 is the minimum charge. They take a look at the cubic feet or cubic yards. But I would bet that that's a big reason why, because it's so convenient. And it should, I think it should reduce dumping instances, because it is, if you're gonna load it in a truck and dump it, you might as well load it in a truck and dump it and do it legally.
How much was it?
$66 was the minimum.
Yeah.
I don't know how many cubic yards that was, but
I feel like that was up to like 3 cubic
3.5,
yards
I
maybe.
think that one truck that is 66, like 3.5.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
So I had, to be honest, I had a small U-Haul truck that I rented because I cleaned out my garage. And I had that and some leftover building material and stuff, and they opened it up, took a look at it, and said, all right, you got the minimum.
So Deputy Peak, would
Yes,
you
ma'am.
mind reporting out right now about what you're seeing, if there's any correlation between this being crowded and maybe less dumping? Are we being optimistic about that?
I would say maybe optimistic. I don't know, honestly, Matt, if you're talking about Colerain specifically, because they have an environmental investigator, and typically unless he needs my assistance, that's on him in the township, if you will. I will say though, the last couple months, my numbers, overall numbers have been lower by about 5 or 6 dumpings per se.
Well, maybe there's a correlation.
Well, you know, I mean, I do ask them when I catch them, why wouldn't you take it, Lumpy? Some have been kicked out because they've been nasty to the folks that are assessing what they're dumping. So they try it, yeah, just crazy stories. So they opt to just try to find someplace else where obviously they keep the money in their pocket and hopefully don't get caught.
Okay. So, but your numbers are down a little bit.
Last couple months have been lower by about, usually I'm in the mid-20s, upper 20s, and it's, you know, last couple months have been right around 20, maybe 18, 19.
Is the summer generally more busy or less busy?
It's typically kind of slower.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, spring is really heavy. For some reason, the fall is maybe spring and fall, clean out.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Very good. So, all right, so Michelle, are you finished with your report?
Yes.
Okay. We've got some policy items for discussion. First of which is our general interest representative position. So I know, right? So we had a subcommittee formed and please report out on your findings.
So yeah, we, how many applications did we get?
Oh, don't remember exactly how many, but we basically figured there were two that we should.
Yeah.
Take a look at.
Two that we took a look at. So we interviewed two people, one being Dominic and another gentleman. And we came to the conclusion that with Dominic's experience and perspective, that we would like to nominate him.
Very good, yeah. Do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Very good, very good. All right, so only 4 of us can vote on this, correct? So it's Greg, myself, Matt, and Sue. All right, so we, I would like to call this for a vote.
Well, I'll second,
Okay,
I'll
okay.
second the nomination.
That for Dom to continue on the board. All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous, welcome back. Dom, not like you ever left, here you are, but but thank you for being willing
It's
to
a
serve.
very fast 2 years, so I feel like I owe you all a little bit more time.
But we want more tours, so we need to go to your other facility.
Anytime.
Yeah, all right, we need to set that up. All right, well, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, the 2025 resource budget, attachment C.
And I can briefly go over this. So how the resource budget, it's pretty simple because we just finished our solid waste plan. So it pretty much is following what's in our solid waste plan. I've highlighted a few things here that are different than the plan, and that's what I'll go over. How the budgets work with Hamilton County is that our budget is due to our budget office in July, but we can still make some changes to it. So if there's any changes from the discussion today. And then it goes before the Board of County Commissioners to vote usually in November or December. So they're voting on all the different departments' budgets. Right now, the 2025 proposed budget is about 4.2 million. And it exceeds our projected revenue of 3.6 million. One thing that, and I said this in an email, but one thing that Ally really helpfully pointed out is we have trended the last 6 years, if you look, and it's pretty consistent actually, that we only spend about 85% of our budgeted amount. And that's not that we're just not wanting to spend money, it's that we have to budget for the full not to exceed amount in the contract. So say we have a contract with BZAC to do our yard trimmings drop-off program, we budget a full amount for almost like worst case scenario of how much yard trimmings would come in, we pay per ton. So we usually don't get that many, and most of our contracts follow a similar pattern. So we usually spend about 85% of what we are budgeting. And so I'll go over the 5 kind of big differences between what was in our solid waste plan and what we have in our proposed budget right now. One is to spend an extra $100,000 on our household hazardous products drop-off program. So right now in the solid waste plan, it's $200,000. We have $300,000 in the proposed budget. Our costs last year were about $250,000. And we are working really hard with communities to partner and have community drop-off events. And this has been a pilot from last year. We've continued on to this year. Chair Moore presented about it a few meetings ago. It's been successful. We think we're going to be partnering with Anderson, which is great, which is going to be expensive. But because of that pilot, we do see the price of the costs increasing. So, and just cost in general for household hazardous waste drop-offs have increased. So we're expecting that to be higher. We are proposing increasing the Waste Reduction Innovation Grant. Usually it's 100,000. We're proposing 200,000 just because we've gotten a lot of interest. We've gotten a lot of great applications. You'll see that in one of the attachments. And so because of that interest, we think that it's, if we want to fund beyond like May or June into next year, we will need to increase that budget. We have Hamilton County Public Health anticipated a 6% increase in personnel costs, so that is in there at 79,000. We are the yard trimmings drop-off program is going out for a request for proposal. Sam Plant's going to talk about that later in the meeting. So this is a little bit of a wild card. We don't know how much the yard trimmings drop-off program is going to cost, but we're anticipating about a 60,000 over what was in the solid waste plan. So that's why we really don't know what it's going to be, but we're budgeting for worst case. And then a 30,000 increase in the environmental enforcement compared to what was in our plan. This is what is in our contract with the Hampton County Sheriff's Office. And the Hampton County Sheriff's Office this year changed a little bit how they're billing us and how they're billing everybody. And so it tweaked the numbers a little bit. So that is the differences. Any questions about that?
No, I'm glad though that we are investing more in the hazardous waste to reduce the toxicity of our waste stream, and I'm glad we're investing more in the yard waste trimmings program because organics is such an issue. The one thing that I guess I would like to maybe see is, in addition to these things that are necessary, if there is more money, is our investment in DEI. Our investment in how are we going to improve recycling in those areas that are lower income, lower education, that really struggle in the multifamily sector. And so since we did that DEI report, maybe, I just want, maybe like to see some investment in that area.
And then,
So, yeah.
and then I had one question too. So on the graph for 2025, 26, 27, are those also at 85% or is that at 100%, just 85% for 2024?
Do you remember?
Usually when I look at that 85%, it's more along the lines of the whole budget itself.
Okay.
So that factors into not only personnel and all these other programs that these contracts with, but it also deals with the grants as well. So my thinking, it probably would not be the 85% because probably the programs are more
It would
likely
stick
to
with
be in
100.
a situation like that.
Okay.
The same with personnel because those are given based on if people are needing to be retired or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, because I just couldn't tell from this if that, like projection wise, it looks like 2027, you'll be right at the 8 month. It's just like, does that include 100% or 85%? So, okay.
So why I asked this question, I think it's worth digging into just a little bit. So we want to keep a certain amount in reserve, and some of these programs were brought forward because we had a significant reserve and we were spending down that reserve to a small extent. And so I think that it begs the question, does this budget allow for something new or different than what we've done in the past? And at what point does it not allow for that, right? I mean, at what point do we say, oh no, we can't fund anything new because we need to keep this revenue balance, right, in the reserve? So could you walk us through that just a little bit? Because I'm a person, and I don't want to speak for the whole board, but the reserve is important and we don't want to dig into it, but it does also beg the question, what do we do if we start to dip below that number? What does that look like? And that's a whole nother conversation. But some of these cool programs that we've been able to initiate is because we have such a huge reserve.
Right. So I will say we are required to keep in 8 months operating. And so that's but that number is not static. It changes depending on what your budget is, right? So if your budget is higher, then your 8 months is going to be higher. That said, there are programs that we can cut back on. I mean, we could not do as many House of Hazardous Products events, or we could not have 3 yard trimming sites. I mean, there are things that we can cut back on. We can stop offering grants. So I think that we would be able, and the 8 months operating, the logic behind that is, say Rumpke landfill stopped accepting waste tomorrow, which is our main revenue source. It would take us about 8 months to come up with a new funding structure. So that's the logic behind 8 months. And so that 8 months, it does wiggle a little bit, and you'll see that in the graph. But I mean, I think we could spend down all the way to the 8 months. I don't think that doesn't make me nervous. What we have talked about and what was talked about during the plan is having that reserve to invest in organics infrastructure. which was, part of the study. And so do we, come up with ways to spend it down, or do we, use this for the organics infrastructure? Is it enough? Probably not. So, there's that whole discussion too. I think that we will, what I'm hoping that this shows is that we have time to make changes. This isn't happening next year or even the year after. We have time that if we saw that trend going down, that we could make adjustments to programs. And even if it's in our solid waste plan, that we're gonna spend $220,000 a year on business programs like the multifamily program, we can still, talk to Ohio EPA and say, this is in our solid waste plan, but we do not have the budget for it. We also have in our solid waste plan a plan of action of if our revenue hits a certain amount, we will be looking at our fees and how we, just for our regular operating, not for any increase in fees, but just, for how we operate. So do we put in a generation fee, which is a different funding structure? So there are amounts in our solid waste plan, I don't know them off the top of my head, that kind of activate, if we go below this amount, we take 100,000 off of the RRI. If we go below this amount, we are taking, 100,000 off of, then the solid waste policy committee needs to discuss this. So we do have a little bit of structure like that, of kind of if we get below this amount. What we'll do.
Okay, so the idea here is we don't have the end result of the organic study, so we don't know what we're looking at. So there's a reason to keep a reserve for that purpose. And I agree with all of these items. Is the waste reduction innovation grant, is that the one that goes out to the 49 jurisdictions?
It can, yes.
Yeah,
We've had
that's the one.
communities apply
The
for it.
communities apply for it year after year.
Yeah, it's also nonprofits,
Yeah.
for-profits,
Okay.
and basically anyone but individuals can.
Okay. Well, I'm going out to all these jurisdictions and they're all taking advantage of this, which is great, right? They're all in partnership with solid waste. So, okay, any other questions related to this? Do you need any action from us?
I would like a motion just approving these differences from the solid waste plan to what the proposed budget is.
You want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I, although I abstain on the whole district.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah. All right, very good, thank you. Duly noted. Okay, thank you. All right, we've got informational items, organics feasibility study update.
Yes, and we actually have a presenter for this. So we've been working diligently with Jamie Zawilla and her team with GT Environmental, and she has a PowerPoint that I'm going to share. So I will just pass it off to Jamie and present, and I will try to share your PowerPoint.
Do you want me to stand up here, Michelle, or?
Yes.
Yeah, this is sort of, it's just navigating from.
Yes, just tell me when you want to. I know that's kind of annoying to just tell me to the slides, but it's the best way for them to be able to see on that.
Well, thank you all for having me today, and Policy Committee Commissioner Dreehouse and guests, I do appreciate being here. As Michelle said, we've been working pretty diligently on this study to get it together and wrapped up, and it does look a little fuzzy. Is that just my eyes, or?
I think it's your eyes.
Okay, so with this study, Resource aims to divert residential and commercial food scraps from the landfill. And because Southwest Ohio does lack the processing infrastructure for the food scraps, Resource has been working with GT and our team of consultants to come up with, or really kind of lay that groundwork and establish what does an organics processing infrastructure look like for Hamilton County. So Michelle, yeah, this is our project team. Let me introduce you to my team. I'm Jamie Zavila. I'm Vice President of GT Environmental, and we are an Ohio-based consulting firm. We work in the materials management space. We help our clients with finding solution sets with materials and any issues that they might have. We have on our team Craig Coker, and I should say, some of our team members are actually on the call today. They dialed in, and while I'll be the main presenter, they're definitely here. The way that our project scope divided up, there are experts that led certain portions of this project study. So I do invite them, to answer any questions when we get through this at the end. But anyway, sorry about that. But Craig Coker with Coker Consulting and Composting. Craig is our compost technical expert. He's performed many feasibility studies, worked in the field. He helps edit Biocycle magazine, and he actually owns his own compost facility as well too, Star City Compost. And we have Nora Goldstein on our team as well. Nora Goldstein is the founder and editor for Biocycle Connect magazine. It's the nation's most premier professional magazine when it comes to organics in this space. We have Karen Lucan with EESI. I think you all know her. She's worked with Hamilton County before, but Karen does bring some international experience with us, as well as her wealth of knowledge with public-private partnerships and facilitations. And she is a Hamilton County resident, so she has quite a good breadth of knowledge for us here. We have David Moody with Moody Engineering. There are 3 of his team members that have been supporting on this project. Moody Engineering is our professional engineering team that's helping with the siting of the piece of this study and the evaluation with that. And he is supported by Milad and Sarah from his team. We also have Amplify for Change, which is led by Mimi and Betsy, and they are communication strategists, and they do engage with audiences to adapt different behavior changes. So we wanted to incorporate all of these facets. That was our proposed scope for the project. Just a lot of words on here. This is absolutely 100% no-no when it comes to PowerPoint presentations. So let me just kind of recap this for you. The intent of our study was to produce a report for resource that's really going to assess these opportunities and further divert organic material, the food scraps material from the landfill. We also want to evaluate that feasibility of that public-private partnership as well. It's a priority for resource that they develop a multifaceted approach that is mutually beneficial to the community. And so our goal here was really to vet a solution that would build that solid foundation, benefit your community, but then also garner that community support and that community buy-in. So we have 3 phases of this project that we were doing. We finished with phase 1 and phase 2, and then phase 3 is where we're engaging in currently right now with the study. What I'm going to do today is report out on that phase 1 and phase 2, which is our evaluation of the organics in the surrounding region, and then the recommended infrastructure. So we'll talk about those next steps when we get further down into the report. So our current landscape, food scraps. So Hamilton County does have food scrap drop-offs available, and they are operated by haulers. We identified 3 food scrap haulers that are operating that. We interviewed them. We asked them, what number of participants are you seeing already participating in this? And we'll talk about that participation because it comes into play really important in our model a little bit later. Not everyone shared with us what their participant number was, so we don't really have a good capture of what that is for Hamilton County right now. But we do know that there are what we're going to call a medium scale processor in Hamilton County, and then we have small scale community composters in Hamilton County. So Finley Market is a registered class 2. Since they jumped up above that 500 square feet that Ohio regulation has on a facility to be permitted for a class 2. A class 2 accepts food scraps, right? So they're listed as what we identify as a medium scale. I will tell you, Brouch Farms, which is located up in Warren County, doesn't accept the food scraps anymore from outside folks. They had some issues, and so they've really scaled that down, but they still hold their classification. And then for these small scale community composters that we're looking at, they really play a role in your current infrastructure, what you have, and being able to service your communities. And while they do play that role, as you can tell, there really needs to be some additional capacity in the region. And when we did interview, we found that one of this community's small scale community composters are utilized by those haulers, but there was one hauler that definitely identified they're hauling over 50 miles away for the food scraps. So they're on the horizon. We know that there is a development of 2 anaerobic digesters, Divert and Syntheca. When we interviewed those 2 anaerobic digesters, their survey desire is for that pre-consumer food scraps, which would not really be your household food scraps or some of that commercial business. So, so where's the infrastructure? Where and how, right? How do we do this? One of the aspects of our stakeholder engagement was really to look at the medium scale facilities that are available, your small scale facilities that are available, but then you also have these 14 registered yard trimming facilities in the county. Would any of them want to expand, grow, take in those food scraps and preserve really what you currently have available for you? So Michelle, we did some stakeholder engagement. I already kind of mentioned a few things that we did. Thanks, Michelle. So we looked and we talked with solid waste districts in the region. We talked with processors, we talked with resource staff, and then we also involved and engaged the policy committee. We utilized visioning sessions, which took into account group engagement. And through that group engagement, we were able, in those activities, we were able to garner quite a bit of feedback. We also utilized some online surveys, and we also did meetings and phone interviews as well. We wanted to get a really, as much as we could, cross-sectional base of information to really inform our study, to understand what we have here, what people were interested in doing, and where we might be able to go. So on our next slide, you'll see that we do have a little bit of stakeholder engagement to share. Michelle has already posted on the resource website some of the engagement outcomes from the sessions that we have. And then when you get the report, you'll read a little bit more about the level of engagement that we also did. But just to point out some key things right off the bat. So the vision for Southwest Ohio's infrastructure, if you look at that pie chart, what was identified as like 46% were suggesting a regional facilities and multiple compost sites across the counties. There's about 18% there for that need of community engagement and that education involvement. Waste management integration as well came in like about that 14%. And then public-private partnerships were at 21%. Now there are realistically perceived barriers and actual challenges and barriers. And 3 of the highlighted ones is community resistance, financial support, and then regulation and licensing for these type of facilities. So taking that into account, Michelle, and jump to the next one. The question really is like, how can we make this infrastructure a reality in Hamilton County? So it really sums up to visioning and collaboration, resource provision, technical assistance in those financing partnerships, public education, but then also policy and partnerships. And as you can tell from this slide, some of the interesting things that we received back is we want to support our marginalized community members. Waste is a privilege and access is an issue, right? We want to look to scale demonstrations and build that resilient network, but then also other comments were consider if it's a centralized hub, where are the multiple inputs and being able to have a sustainable output. Overall, it was, I thought, a lot of incredible feedback that we could have for our direction. And it was very interesting, the support that was already here for what you do have to make sure it, whatever resource moves forward with, it continues to support that going forward. One of the interesting things that did come out is that people did say that they felt in Hamilton County, there are some really unique opportunities with existing relationships that you do have to really build that resilient network. So being able to leverage those was a key thing that came out of that. Okay. So to design the system, right? How much do we need? How big does it need to be? What does that footprint really look like? So what we did, and part of our study first, which this was really led by Nora Goldstein of BioCycle, Michelle, you can move to the next slide, is we wanted to be able to know what that potential feedstock was. So we conducted over case studies of communities. So we looked at 4 communities that had curbside collection programs, and we looked at 2 that had drop-off collection programs. Now, on this slide, it's only presenting to you the curbside analysis that we came up with. But what this really did was able to tell us of these better performing programs, what are they seeing as far as diversion goes? What are they seeing when it comes to participation in the number of households? And how do we take that back and how do we incorporate that in our study to be able to gauge what that diversion might be or what that participation might be? To point out here on the structure, there are some definitions I just want to explain to you all how we defined it in our study. Universal availability non-subscription is available. So this would be a collection of food scraps available to all the households. It's not mandatory, but it would be incorporated already within that. They all pay that fee, and it's usually incorporated in a utility bill per se. The universal availability franchise subsidized subscription that you see there, that is available to all households as well. It's not mandatory, but it does require that household to actually sign up and subscribe for that service of that food scrap collection. And then when we throw in that franchise would be awarded by a government, and there would be some subsidy in order to help the cost. So on this slide, we did not put forth, and I should have these numbers handy, which I don't, but I can pull that up from my report. But we do analyze so that it's available for Hamilton County, what that subsidy looks like across each of these communities and what they, that were franchised, what they paid, and what the household essentially paid. So you have that idea of cost when you think about the collection. Again, we focused on the organics processing infrastructure, but we did need to touch on collection because we needed to understand or get a better understanding of what the potential might be coming into that facility to give us this diversion. So as you can tell, we do have a basis here that informed our study to help us with that diversion. So next, we actually projected out the tonnages. This is the summary. So I'm going to jump into a little bit before I get into the summary about how he came out to this summary piece of it. So we needed to estimate the tonnages of potential available. We looked at the residential and we also looked at commercial, but only a selective commercial piece. And we looked at that selective commercial piece selective because we didn't want to compete with any planned diversion infrastructure that was going into play. So we worked with Resource and we used 5 sectors, 5 NAICS code sectors that we really targeted on. When it comes to the commercial sector, we utilized US EPA's food waste estimator map. They have a listing of companies that generate are anticipated to or were surveyed and anticipate large quantities of food scraps. We utilized that to come up with some tonnage estimates, and then we supplemented that, and this was led by Karen, with some specific interviews to those particular businesses to find out their interest level for competing or for participating in the food scrap diversion programs. So we utilized that and then was able to come up with a commercial number. Residential came into play. We used four different scenarios for residential, and for each of those scenarios, we did a low, medium, and high estimation. So low One scenario goes back to that universal non-subscription for food scrap collection. Second scenario looked at this universal availability franchise subsidized subscription model. And then third model looked at, well, fourth model was drop off, and then third model was, oh my gosh, I can't remember. It was just straight subscription. I have to go back and look at that. But overall, we did 4 of the different models, vetted them, we came out with tonnages over the time frame from 2025 to 2024, 2041. We really utilized a lot of the generation disposal estimations from the solid waste plan. And then we also incorporated the findings from Resources' current landfill disposal study. All right, get all that baked in. we come up to this. And this is what we came out with, the scenario 2, which is that universal franchise subsidized subscription. And this is, again, households would subscribe for this collection service. A residential tonnage, what the commercial tonnage came out. And then we also estimated yard trimming. So it's not just food scraps that would be coming to this center, right? This facility for processing, you would have some food scraps. So I should point out that while we do have on here community yard trimmings, that's not a guarantee that all of that yard trimming would come, because each of our communities in this county handle their yard trimmings on their own and might have contracts with wherever that might go. We did include it in this study though as a potential option for it coming to Resource. Again, if it doesn't and that feedstock isn't available, that will impact as we get further down. We'll talk about how that would impact the study. Total 86,000, about 87,000 tons is kind of what you're looking at on a yearly basis on average of feedstock that would be coming in. And that again is food scraps, yard trimmings, compostable paper, and I think that was it. Vegetative, not vegetative food scraps. Pretty big facility, right? Okay, go on. Okay, so aspirational goals in your solid waste plan. You have estimated what you think in 2025, 26, 27, 28, what you feel you're going to be diverting away from the landfill. That's what's shown in this chart in the gold. Is 2022, 2023 are actual, 24, 25, those are projected from the solid waste plan. There's an aspirational goal to divert 27% of material away from the landfill. Now that's not just food scraps that was stated in the plan for Hamilton County, but if you do add in the food scrap diversion of what we modeled, which is the darker blue, you can see you are definitely getting closer to that 27% aspirational goal. Now I didn't do, Michelle, I didn't do the projections of the plan. So whether there's overlap as far as organics, food scraps in that model, I don't quite know an answer to that. Obviously if we wanted to back that out, we might have a different look, but I just wanted to give you guys kind of that aspirational look to show the impact that adding food scraps diversion could do. And again, this was just a medium level that we anticipated in our model. Obviously, if you had higher participation, that could bump that up more. And if you had more participation in the commercial sector, that could bump the next one is commercial. So for commercial, same methodology. We utilized the plan projections in the goal, and then we estimated what that projection would be for commercial food scraps and how quickly you could get to, per se, that 50% aspirational goal, which again is just an overall diversion goal. Okay, alternative options. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Taking into account, right, our stakeholder engagement, our conversations with Resource, what we wanted to do is come up with what are some alternative options for managing organics in Hamilton County, right? We have 4 alternatives. Alternative A, one large centralized, we'll call it centralized facility. Alternative B would be 2 facilities. they're still large and relatively centralized, right? C are 3 medium scale decentralized facilities. And when we're talking about medium scale, that's a throughput of 20,000 tons per year or less is what we were looking at for. And then for alternative D, this is, let's stay where we're at and let's continue to increase these multiple small scale community sites. Those were anticipated capacities about that 4 to 5 tons per year. Yes, Sue?
I had a question. In one of your previous slides, the projection for organics was like 86,000 tons at the most.
I'm getting there. You
Oh,
ready?
okay.
Okay. You're ahead of me. I'm getting there.
So, okay.
Good question, Sue.
Yeah.
You're just ahead of me. So when we look at our little chart over here, our table on the side, what we see is that one large scale facility has an incoming feedstock of 146,000. As Sue pointed out, our calculations before were only like 88,000 tons. But incoming feedstock, you need more wood chips, you need inoculant, you need everything. So that is the true number that would really be processed at that facility. So we can go back and we can say, oh, it's only 88,000 tons, but realistically, that's what you need the footprint for, is that amount on that site. Does that make sense? Yeah,
No, it makes
so
sense.
that's why when you see that incoming feedstock, that's very important for your communities to know and understand about what's gonna be coming in. Maybe it's not all coming from the commercial, maybe it's not all coming from your residential, but do you need those wood chips? So you might have to be shipping that in. It's still traffic, right? So there are pros, cons, there's risks, there's with all of these. So how do we move forward? What does that really look like for Hamilton County? And this is where we really involve the resource staff as well as the policy committee. We developed a weighting evaluation criteria to really look at these 4 alternatives. As we pointed out, some have pros, some have cons. So we wanted to have a larger set of folks really take a look at this so it doesn't get skewed, to drive forward the solution set that would work for Hamilton County. So we, as the team of experts, came together, developed the criteria. Then what we did is gave it a raw score on a number of 1 to 5. How important, less important, right? So we went on 1 to 5. We provided that to resource staff and they gave a weighting criteria. So we scored it and then they weighted it. And we applied that weighting to the score to come out with a total. But then we also had another step in there because we wanted the policy committee to be involved in that. So we grouped those into categories such as cost or public-private partnership or whatnot. And then we also allowed the policy committee to come back and do a weighting on each of those. And we applied that across the scale as well too. So taking and looking at it very dimensionally to make sure it was equally, or what we felt in our engineering process, equally distributed to come out with a solution. I think that's on the next slide. Yeah, oh, I just talked about that, darn it, that's okay. Weighting. Alternative C was what weighted the highest. As you can tell, when you get the total score for all the process that we went through and all of the different alternatives that we looked for, it is relatively close to alternative B when you're looking at the total score. But alternative C for the 3 medium scale facilities came out as the winner on top. 2 large scale facilities come into that second. The third would be alternative A, the 1 large scale, and then the 4th was the stay where you're at with just all the small scale community sites. Now, when we talk about that alternative C for that medium scale facility, it is more of a decentralized approach when you're thinking of 3 facilities across the county. It doesn't really compete as much with those small scale composters because you can develop a more of a resilient network in order to maintain those small scale composters, but then also service larger population as well as commercial with those medium scale as well. I would say the area requirements for Your medium scale facility is a smaller footprint, and you'll know that when we went back a couple slides, we showed the processing capacity and the throughput at those medium scale facilities. That's what the medium scale option gives you. So footprint requirements. So what does this look like? Now that we have an actual,
Real quick on the last slide.
Yeah.
Is there, do you consider that statistically significant, the differences between option C and option B? They seem almost the same score.
correct, they're almost the same score. I would not statistically say they are very much different, but they are different when we're thinking of moving forward for sizing those facilities and planning and moving forward on that end. So yes, I agree, they're not. The next major hurdle, I wouldn't even call it a hurdle, but the next major step is definitely how would that look for Hamilton County? Cost, size, where, all of that will come into play.
Thank you.
We looked at composting technologies and approaches that are available for what we do have. So the windrow option up there is an option that is available: aerated static pile, tunnel reactor, agitated bay, and rotary drum. This footprint requirement and these technologies is really Craig Coker's wheelhouse. I'm going to try to do this justice. If there's any further questions, I'm sure he'll be able to for sure answer those for you. In the windrow composting, there are definitely more challenges and complications with odors and food and just management when we're thinking of food on your sites. At the larger scales or medium scales, aerated static pile is a technology that is available that uses aeration to really speed up the decomposition process. And if you see from that photo up there, those are trenches where the compost is sitting on top of those forced air pipes and forces the air through that composting process. The tunnel reactor is a fully enclosed system that does decompose the food waste into a compost. Agitated bay is enclosed, and I'm not as up to speed on the differences between the tunnel reactor and the agitated bay. And then the rotary drum is another enclosed system that is available. Tunnel reactor, agitated bay, and rotary drum obviously have more expenses associated with those because they are technology pieces that are a lot more than just per se like the force there with the aerated static pile. So in going through the processes and looking at the available technologies, we do recommend the aerated static pile system, but of course there is write-up in the report for if you're interested as a county to look at the other options for technologies. Craig is probably going, oh my gosh, Jamie. All right, let's look at alternative B, medium scale facility. In this facility, again, this is all Craig's brainchild with the footprint and what is needed. If we're just looking at the residential SSO, as far as food scraps that are coming through, this is just residential, you're about at that 18,000 tons. Keep in mind, that's just food scraps. Remember, you've got yard trimmings, we've got inoculant, all these other things that would have more additional material. Once he went through the food scrap footprint, once he went through the footprint analysis, what that comes out to be for an aerated static pile is about 6 to 8 acres for the medium-sized site. So in this alternative, you would need 3 of those, of that 6 to 8 acre site. Yeah.
How does that compare to the photos of the sites that you just showed? Like is 6 to 8 tons the size of those facilities?
So 6 to 8 acres.
Yeah.
So
Okay, sorry.
if you go back to the photos, I don't, if you want to go back one. I don't honestly know what that site is.
I would guess the aerated stack pile is maybe an acre, probably less.
That's great.
JB, that facility is in Syracuse, New York. It handles about 16,000 tons per year and about a 7 acre footprint.
But that's probably more than what we're seeing just on the photo though. Or that's a
That's the entire site is 7 acres. The actual structure itself is about an acre, acre and a half.
How big is one of those, long,
stack pile.
yeah, how long is this pile?
Roughly 20 feet wide by 80 feet long by 8 feet tall, roughly.
Thank you.
What do you do for odor control?
Here's the dark- You see the dark brown material on top? That is called a bio layer, and it is an 8-inch to 10-inch thick layer of compost that basically the air is being blown into the pile from underneath and migrates up through the pile, and the bio layer acts as an odor control mechanism. Extremely effective. The California Air Resources Board has demonstrated that a biolayer will remove about 98% of the volatile organic compounds that come out of composting. And as we know, VOCs equals odors.
Yeah, because as long as you keep it aerated so that it doesn't become an anaerobic environment, then it's usually not too bad. Speaking as a microbiologist.
And with the filter on top.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig. So while it's not up here, just, you will be getting the report, but just to put it into perspective that we went ahead and did a footprint analysis for a large facility, just so Hamilton County would have that information. That large facility would be about 30 acres. So one site would be about 30 acres that would be needed. Our next steps is siting, looking at exclusionary criteria and figuring out where these sites could potentially go. We did have a few, at least one, maybe two, I think it was two, small scale composters that were interested in scaling up. So one for sure has enough acreage that could very well work out with some type of a public-private partnership for Hamilton County. We have been going through the RTI, the cages system and everything else. Ideally, having this on public property is going to be more cost effective for resource, and finding an acreage at 30 acres is not coming up.
Because I'm looking for the same thing.
It's not coming up in our data set system. Getting it down to that 6 to 8 acre site. There are a couple that could potentially work, but that's the next step, is really looking at, hey, where would these sites be? How could they work? Where would they be located at? So there's a bit of elbow grease and more communications and strategic sessions to go through in order to come up with that. Once we get that piece done, then Craig will be able to give you all an opinion of probable cost of what that would look like for your infrastructure in Hamilton County. And one other piece that we have layered in is a stakeholder engagement piece at this stage of the project. They're working right now with Amplify for Change on what does that look like and what is the messaging that we really want to communicate to the Hamilton County constituents of this study.
Is there a way to show us a map of where the current facilities are? Because you listed them out, but I don't have any sense of where they all are. I know where some of them are.
Yeah.
But especially if you're approaching them to say, would you be interested in expansion? Be interesting to see how far and wide they are.
We do have a map in the report. I apologize. We should have probably included that on there just so you guys could see where the small scale composters are. In that next step, and that's part of what Moody has already done, is mapped and we put a couple of different polygons on the different areas of the sites available. So probably what we could do is just kind of send that over in a PDF to let you all take a look at, so you get a chance to see where that's at. Yeah, any questions? Again, we have Nora and Craig and Karen on the call as well too to help us out. Guys, questions?
So why are you planning on, why didn't we do an assessment of local feedstock versus the idea of shipping wood chips in from out of town?
No, we did.
Okay.
But again, it's the whole aspect. That was a good question. I said I was going to circle back to that and I didn't. Hamilton County does not flow control materials, and so for those communities and everybody that has contracts available already with their yard waste, we can't guarantee that that's actually gonna be feedstock or woody feedstock for Hamilton County at this point. We did, like I said, we did model in what we thought would be capturable for Hamilton County feasibly. But of course, if those communities don't bring that in or that material doesn't come into this facility, you need that woody material, right? You need carbon matching, all of that. You need that woody material, so you would have to purchase those feedstocks.
So, but we could do flow control on the woody material. Yeah, that is toolbox.
That is definitely
It
a
is-
question that you
it's
all
in
would
our-
have to
It's in our toolbox.
to look
if we
at
wanna use it.
if
Yeah.
you wanted to, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The volume that you're thinking about, does it necessitate curbside pickup?
Yeah, so when we modeled, we were looking at, the model that we selected was a subscription base where the household would pick up, a household would have to subscribe and pay for that service. Now, we did model in a franchise, which, based on the pricing level would have to, in a franchise, it would have to be subsidized by the government, essentially, that cost of that collection. So that was factored into our model. We do have in our report the various different low, medium, and high participation levels that we assume for collection. But yes, that was what really fed the amount of feedstock that we thought could be coming in as far as food scraps would be collection.
And would that be like a once a week collection thing?
So, yeah, that was the level that we didn't get into. We kept it at a high level. I would recommend, if you really are diving in, once you get into this organics, if you're going forward with your infrastructure, building it, to really dive into that collection piece. What are people willing to pay? Are people gonna sign up? And then not only that, but really model, how does that look? How many trucks is that? How much does that capacity look like really for Hamilton County? Which communities, that sort of thing. I would recommend that.
For the residential numbers that you estimated, what percentage of people did you estimate would sign up for the subscription?
I can tell you, I think it was like, I think it was 15, was it 10 or 15%? Karen might know, she was helpful with this.
Yeah, so I'm here. So Nora Goldstein did a lot of benchmarking and communicating, and obviously she's the editor of BioCycle, so she knows this information. We were conservative and said, if you have to pay $20 to $40 a month to subscribe for curbside collection of food scraps, we estimated about 15%.
So I noted that there are no costs associated with any of these.
I'm sorry, what? I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
No, Karen, I was wondering about costs.
Where are the costs? Yeah.
Right, the anticipated cost for the different scenarios, just curious at what point we would see.
So keep in
costs.
mind, you'll have costs with collection. That wasn't part of this organics feasibility study to do. If you do carry on and do a collection study, that would be one thing that they would look at. Our costs that we will provide to you will be the organics processing infrastructure, what that would cost to build that, and opinion of probable costs and operate that type of system. We can't, at this stage in the game, we need more information from the sites and to know, is there electric, is there water, like what type of improvements would you be needing for those particular sites to really give you that opinion of probable cost. So that portion of the study is coming, it's just on hold until we get through this siting evaluation.
For the aerated static pile one that he showed us from New York, I think.
Yeah.
Can we get their what that cost?
Craig, do you think?
You know that.
Or
the
Nora,
data?
That's what we're gonna look at when we get to the costing model. It's hard to put a costing model together until we have some idea of the site.
But just
But
knowing
just-
what that costs would give me a.
Craig, do you have any idea of what that New York site?
As a rule of thumb, for aerated static pile composting, I would assume a CapEx of about $200 per ton of capacity. So the 17,000 ton per year medium scale facility, which by the way includes 5,000 tons of food waste and the rest is yard trim and wood chips. So that if you look at that, it's call it 18,000 tons round numbers, 3.5 million, 4 million, not including acquisition of land.
And Sue, to sort of answer your question, I did speak with Pagro out of Clark County. And their tipping fee is about $40 to $45 a ton, but they only want pre-consumer. They do not want post-consumer.
Actually, that's another question too. So is this assuming just sort of post-consumer, post-commercial? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we looked at for our study. Again, didn't want to impact or interfere with the plant facilities, the anaerobic digesters that are already in play.
Part of the infrastructure include, if you would come to my community, I would want you to almost constantly street sweep. I'd want road repairs, because of all the heavy trucks coming through and things like that. That's something that we hold Rumpke to. Would that be part of the infrastructure? Would that be additional costs not included in?
No, Craig, you don't typically
We
include that.
we don't normally include in the model things like road repair and street sweeping. Now, we do in the CapEx side of the model include a contingency. We can certainly include a contingency in the OpEx side of the model for those kinds of additional operational costs.
Jamie, this is Nora. If I could, I just looked up an article we had. And so the facility in the upper right corner was a pre-existing yard trimmings composting facility. And the article we had, it was a $2.4 million retrofit to build this extended aerated static pile. And I'll put the link to that article in the chat if it's of interest.
Thank you, Nora.
Now, the $200 a ton unit cost factor I offered is for a true greenfield site where you've got to clear trees, grade the site, build an entrance, build a scale house and scales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not converting an existing yard waste facility. That can be done more cheaply if there's adequate room.
No, that was it. The next steps was the end of it. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's been a joy working with the district and the team in helping to put together this study for you all and help vet a solution for moving forward. As I stated, we do have some next steps left that we need to definitely work through. Nora was able to do an additional case study for us in this report on Pope Douglas County, which really talks about how the Pope Douglas was able to start at a bit of a smaller operational and then scale up to, and it is scaling up to that larger centralized facility. So that is something that I think would be very useful and helpful for Hamilton County that she just got that report finished today or this week. So we'll get that as well included in the study very well.
Actually, that reminds me too. So is there, and I know this gets complicated, is there any way to figure out what it would cost for, say, like one of the larger facilities and then the multiple small facilities, kind of more like satellite locations?
Yeah, So thinking of the way that our project was laid out, actually, this was really surprising to me, because I thought for sure it was gonna be one large centralized facility, gung ho, let's have at it. And it really, I mean, listening to the stakeholder engagement and all the feedback that came in, as well as the waiting, it's not that. So in our group, you know, we needed to really pivot a little bit as how we were moving forward and approaching. The cost that we'll do is for that smaller I should say mid of medium, I don't keep using smaller, but medium scale is the cost that we'll give. We did do the footprint though for the large scale. So you do have that to know exactly how big and large that would need to be. At the end of the project, I guess if we had budget left, we could possibly maybe do an opinion of probable cause, or we don't have a site in play. It's hard to do that though, because you don't know.
There's too many questions. Yeah,
There's too many unknowns, electric, water, all of that at the particular site, road insurance access, whatnot, but,
Jamie, that being said, I would offer to the lady's question that that large central facility is likely going to be on the order of $35 to $40 million, not including the cost of land.
Well, and I'm not talking about like the one large, I'm talking more like the two smaller, smallish, largish.
Well, if we have
Medium.
3 mediums.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll be between 3 and 4 million each,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
So probably we could do 3 mediums for, you know, 12 million. And yeah, originally I was thinking the large centralized, but the more I read about some of the research, that they were recommending the decentralized models because there's less source to emissions, more convenient to people.
Well, and it's
If
easier
you
to
don't have
build
this-
in phases and say,
Yeah,
okay, we're gonna do this one first, and then we'll do this one, and then,
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm
So,
curious, Sue, if you know, or, you know, on the medium, I get the concept of decentralized and equity and accessibility. But if we're talking about hauling, you know, household pickups,
Yeah.
then I don't know that that's as much of an issue, is it? I'm asking just kind of.
well, you know, the city of Cincinnati, we just got a grant from the USDA, and we're doing a pilot right now on collecting from households. So I can let you know.
I'm glad the city's gonna pay for that.
Well,
Not the county.
it's a grant that we got.
And you're using a centralized location to take that
Well,
waste,
right
or-
now, no, actually, there isn't, no, like, it's decentralized, it's going to most of the small locations. They're small enough for this pilot that they can take, this pilot is small enough that our current infrastructure. And some might,
To know if there's retrofit opportunities with.
Right.
small guys.
so yeah, it'll be good to see that
It's a
mapped
good
out.
point,
Is that
it
what-
doesn't matter where they're located. Yeah.
So is that one of the things you were talking about earlier when you showed I guess that was medium or small, like when Takini Farm and all them were there? Are those the sites you're talking about?
Yeah, those are like,
All right, so do any of them have the space to be able to?
yeah, there was, actually, I read my study a little bit better, but, Valley View has over 100 acres. Now they are located in Claremont County, and they did express interest to increase their capacity. So let's do that. Definitely on the.
And that'll help the east side. Now we need one in Indiana for the west side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one more, that had the 6 to 8, it had at least the 6 to 8 acres, and,
All 3 of the USDA sites, the Jackson Street Farms, the Carriage House Farms, and the Valley View were on there as potentials. And then also the Camp Washington site, which is actually owned by the Board of Commissioners.
And then has anybody reached out to Green Acres too to see if they'd be willing to expand anything?
I don't think so.
Because I know they've already, I think, got area static files.
I don't know if they were on our list. I'd have
They
go
used
back
to
and
be a
look.
class 4 and they dropped it. They don't want it.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we talked to a lot, oh my gosh, there was quite a few. We talked to as far as class 4 facilities and whatnot, just trying to gauge interest if they were interested in expanding. So
Is this proposal for a class 4 or class 3?
it would be a class 2. Yeah. Or not, right. It is going through his mind, yeah.
All right, so we've got a little ways to go here. Thank you for the presentation. Very-
Awesome,
Thank you
yeah,
for all the
thank
questions.
you.
It's very
Appreciate
helpful.
it. Thank you, team, for hopping on the call today. Appreciate it.
Very good, thank you. Let me just say, as you look at land, I mean, the retrofit, of course, is intriguing to me because it's cheaper, but the land bank or the Port Authority might have some sense. where
We
it's-
did, that is great, thank you for that suggestion, and we are also, looking at brownfield redevelopment as
Yep.
well too.
Yep.
Just to have an option.
Okay, thank you. We'll look forward to the rest of the report.
Thank you.
So
Okay,
that will be in November, or will that be available for our next meeting?
Well, I don't have time to ready for the next meeting, but I can definitely say for the next meeting, we will at least have the property areas. There's still more vetting and evaluation to go through with those particular sites as well too.
Okay.
I wish it was as easy as saying you only have 3 options and here they are, you gotta move forward, but there will be a few more options, and so another evaluation criteria needs to come in with that as well, in terms of, again, some of our perceived barriers, not in my backyard, and other different things of focus, so that's gonna be a pretty extensive evaluation criteria for that siting piece.
okay. All right, let's move on to yard trimmings drop-off program update.
Yes, so following the composting theme, we are gonna be going out to bid for our yard trimmings drop-off program, and so it was a good time to bring in Sam Plant, overseeing that program to just give you a brief update on what she's planning and what we've got going on there.
Yes, so I'm Sam Plant. I have been with Hamilton County since September. I call myself the professional dabbler within the county resource team because I work with the yard trimmings program, I work with reuse, I work with SUE and multifamilies. And of course, our big focus this year has been organics. So thank you, Jamie, for priming everyone to talk about organics. And the yard trimmings program is one of the county's biggest programs. So it's been running, I had to ask Michelle to confirm because I couldn't almost find, it's been running for so long, since roughly the 90s. And it's one of our highest participated in programs. There's very strong demand for an outlet for yard trimmings because out of the 48 communities, some have regular pickups and they're managed by the communities, as was also mentioned in the organic study, but some of them actually don't have any outlets at all. So we need there to be some accessible outlets for residents to take their yard trimmings, and then those yard trimmings be handled in an appropriate way where the yard trimmings don't end up in the landfill and are either composted or mulched. And that also just keeps that material in the community, makes for better soil. I don't think I have to argue the importance of compost to this group in particular. So we currently are at the end of our contract term with the last bid. And that bid included 3 drop-off sites. We have one located in Anderson Township. We have one located in Green Township. And then we have one located in Colerain Township right now. The original bid was a 3-year bid with 2 option years. We did elect for both of those option years. And then out of those 3 sites, 2 of them are operated at the same location as the partner that we're working with. We're working with Rumpke and Bezak in the current contract. Rumpke is operating the Oakdale site in Green Township as well as a site at their own facility. And then Bezak is operating the site in Anderson Township. So Bezak owns and operates the Anderson Township drop-off. Of course, Rumpke owns and operates at their Colerain facility. But we do partner with Oakdale Elementary School for that 3rd drop-off site. And that 3rd drop-off site is kind of more of a pop-up style. Rumpke will send out a truck, and then on the weekends we'll do collection and they'll take it back with them. The goal of this coming bid is going to be, in an ideal world, to have more permanent fixture sites, so that way we can lower the cost of this program. The program currently, we budgeted for 2024, the budget was $376,000. Luckily, we do end up, as kind of we were talking about when planning for the budget, typically under budget because we're planning for maximum tonnage. So last year, I believe we were about $80,000 under what we had budgeted for, and it does look like we are on track to be pretty significantly under budget this year as well. But that Oakdale site has been the most expensive because we're having to pay for people to go out, I'm paying for a porta potty to be there on the weekends. The tonnage for what we're collecting is more expensive. So we can find a site on the west side that can be more permanent and host that yard trimmings drop-off site. That's gonna be a major goal when we're evaluating incoming bids. Otherwise, the bid will probably look very similar whenever it goes out. I'm hoping it goes out in the next couple of months. But it should look very similar. Budget should be about the same, and I'm going for another 3-year contract with potential option years. Some changes to that bid is I'm creating a little more flexibility on that location space. So that if partners have potential locations in mind that would be easier to operate and cheaper to operate, we can do that. And also just trying to make things continuously accessible to residents. I'm also going to be splitting out that bid a little bit differently, where Christmas tree drop-off has traditionally been run in the first 2 weekends of January, and our drop-offs run from March to December with that exception. I'll be creating an option for this yard trimmings program to run year-round. Or if there's no market for year-round operation, or if that does end up being out of budget, for partners to bid specifically on yard trimmings or Christmas trees, as it seems there could be a higher market for just that Christmas tree pickup, and it might make that specific pickup cheaper. It's a very woody material. Composters could be interested, parks could be interested. There are more potential outlets for that Christmas tree product than just for your standard yard trimmings, which could have the weed seeds. It could be more brushy. You get a lot of leaves. Fall is definitely going to be our busiest time, and you have to find a use for those leaves. So we have some landscapers that typically will bid, and we're looking forward and hoping for as many bids as possible to really kind of widen that pool and have some options to lower costs over time. Other than that, not too many changes yet. Really hoping for that year-round operation though, because as the weather has been a little bit more mild the past few winters, we have had a stronger demand from residents to open earlier. People are starting to do yard work in February, and currently, again, there's no outlet for that. Other than that, yard trimmings in general, our solution has been these drop-offs traditionally. One thing that I would like to see kind of outside of this bid and have already begun working on is partnering more with communities about starting their own pickup curbside programs, whether that's just for leaves or whether that's for brush, seeing what we can do and what resources they need in order to do that themselves. Because as it stands, diversion for yard trimmings is a lot lower than it really could be. We're definitely not diverting everything that we could, and a lot of it comes down to accessibility. Yard trimming sites, while we have 3 and we try to spread them throughout the county, are still not going to be accessible to everyone. You need a vehicle to be able to get to the sites. You need to be able to have the time to go. Right now, our yard trimming sites are mostly open on the weekends, with the exception of BZAC, which is open all week. But on the west side, hours are a little bit more limited, and if someone's not able to make those hours, that's not quite accessible to them. So I'm hoping to work more closely with communities. I'm already started to have a handful of those conversations at what those smaller scale pickups could look like, what we could do with that end product then. And that's really about all I have to say. I wanted to keep it short and sweet since, again, we've talked a bit about organics, and I don't want to exhaust anyone. Any questions?
I have a quick one. So at the site of Oakdale, is that something where Rumpke contacted them to have it there, or did Hamilton
So that
County?
was a funny story with that one. So we were having it at Kaluga Park.
Yeah, I'm a Green Township resident. so I know all about it.
Yeah. And Kaluga Park decided to build pickleball courts. And so we had to somewhat last minute throw together an option to continue, because it is a very popular drop-off site, and we do want to ensure that there's somewhere in that Green Township area where people can take material. But my understanding is that we worked with Green Township and they were able to find a volunteer to host that site, and that's where Oakdale Elementary came in. And they've been an excellent partner. It is a bit of a challenge having a site that's on a school grounds, not because any fault of their own, but if they have a 5K for charity on the weekends or just things that they should be able to do and want to do, we then have to adjust the yard trimmings hours, and it's just less reliable then to the residents. We want something that's gonna potentially be more steady.
I was just wondering if they looked at anything else. So they kind of redid the recycling area that's on Harrison Avenue there. I don't know if there'd be like room in the kind of back right corner for.
We're
that there,
definitely
just
looking at
FYI.
potential other sites to host that pop-up, should there not be another option where a landscaper or a potential person able to compost can take the material at that site. So we are looking, and it would probably stay in that general area just because of the demands that is in that area. But there'd be some flexibility.
Yeah, well, and I just think too, because Harrison's a lot more, it's a lot closer to 74. And if you're not from Green Township, you probably don't know where Oakdale is. So, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Actually, no, not actually, I have a question, but not for you, actually for Jamie, was the material from the county's yard waste program factored in? Okay, just check, thank you.
That is a known fact that we can get.
Like, you know you can get that, yeah, good.
Yes, last year we diverted a little over 3,000 tons of material from that program alone.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, waste reduction innovation grant update, Michelle?
Yeah, and we can do this quickly. We can read them all here. These were the grants that we received since the last meeting. It's a little over $86,000 worth of grants, and they are widely varied. These are ones that are under 15,000, so you don't need to vote on them. They include some food rescue that Christ Hospital is going to do with a blast chiller. Includes Cincinnati Zoo doing some more organics pickup for food scraps and elephant dung. It includes One Source, which is going to be doing a cargo van purchase so that they can get more donated furniture. So it's really a reuse option. Finley Market is going to be expanding their compost collection and also purchasing some more uniform recycling receptacles. And Kennedy Heights is doing a backyard composting effort for their residents, where they're actually purchasing backyard compost bins and doing some education for their residents. Talbert House is doing a really cool reuse project. There's actually a lot of people who are overnight residents or stay at Talbert House, and so they actually have quite a bit of material that they're going to be turning into reusables there, which is pretty cool. And then the Village of North Bend, if you've not heard, is building a brand new shiny park, and they are putting in some recycling receptacles there. So those are the grants.
Very good.
And we have shared here if you have any more questions.
Any questions related to this?
Yeah, I'm just glad that the revolving deadline is working.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah, great, good programs. Okay, the next item is the upcoming meetings. Is there anything else? We are very late to this, so I apologize for that. All right, upcoming meeting then on November 20th, 2024 at this location. There's nothing else, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right.
We'll do slow.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.